Hello everyone. Welcome to the first workshop in our REDCap training series, Designing Your First Project. My name is Michael. I'm a research analyst in the Kimmel Lab. And the goal of this workshop is to cover the basics of building your first REDCap project and discuss some best practices. So REDCap stands for Research Electronic Data Capture. It was developed at Vanderbilt University in 2004 to be used as a database and survey administration tool. And we've had it at CAMH for around 3 years. It's under active development. We at CAMH aim to upgrade annually, and the software is private, but it's provided to hospitals and educational institutions for free. And REDCap's purpose is to replace Excel, Access, and other traditional data collection software. You can administer surveys. You'll see that it's highly customizable. You have the ability to constrain the type of data that you expect in your data collection. And all this helps limit data entry errors and accidentally collecting protected health information. So when you log in, this is the main menu. You'll see that it has a brief overview of REDCap. If you require any assistance from somebody at CAMH while designing your project, or if you have any REDCap related questions, you can email us at redcapimgsupport. Otherwise, you can find more information in the training resources. REDCap provides a bunch of different videos covering a variety of topics, so feel free to check there if you're looking for something specific. Otherwise, we also at CAMH have a REDCap wiki at mediawiki.camh.ca. With a bunch of different resources as well. On the home page, the top navigation bar also includes a tab for My Projects. This page includes all the projects you currently have access to, and if you'd like, you can organize them with different folders with different colors. So now we're ready to create our first project. We'll start by clicking the New Project tab in the top navigation bar. And let's give our project a name. We'll call it REDCap Basics 2019. And for the purpose of this project, we'll call it practice/just for fun. But in your own work, you might also use REDCap projects for things like operational support, such as designing feedback surveys, quality improvement, or for organizing your research data. And you'll see that if a project is being used for research, a lot more information is required, such as the name of the principal investigator and the institutional review board number that was assigned to your project by the ethics office. But we're going to go back to practice/just for fun for today. If you'd like, you can assign your project to a folder and give it some optional notes. I'm just going to leave this blank. And finally, we have the option of creating a blank project, essentially starting from scratch or using a template. For now, we'll select the empty project option, but later on, we'll show you how to use the templates. And you can go ahead and click Create Project. So once you've created your project, you'll be automatically redirected to this project setup page. And this page is designed to look like one big checklist of things that we have to get through. You'll see that at each step you can click I'm done and a checkbox appears. So we have our main project settings. These are things like whether you want to use surveys in your project or collect longitudinal data. Then there's the designing our actual forms that we're interested in, some optional modules and customizations, setting up project bookmarks, assigning user rights and permissions to any colleagues who will also be working on the project, testing, and finally, every project in REDCap starts off in development mode. So once you've tested your project thoroughly by entering some dummy data, you may then move it to production status. Once in production mode, you can begin collecting real data. However, if you need to make any changes to your project, those changes will need to be approved by a REDCap admin before taking into effect. This is mainly meant to prevent losing data from doing something like deleting a variable that you've already been collecting data from. So it's just an extra step to help ensure the quality of your data. So let's start by creating our first form. And to do that, we'll use the online designer. And you'll see that we already have an instrument, my first instrument, that gets created by default. We're going to go ahead and rename this. And for our first form, we're going to do a demographics form. So I'm going to rename it demographics and click save. And now let's get into it. So you'll see that our first variable, record_ID, gets automatically created. And what this is this is basically your subject ID, and this is going to help you identify data from the same subject across all of your different forms. And then now to add a new field, we're going to click Add Field. And you'll see that you can change the field type. So this is one of the ways REDCap allows you to constrain the type of data that you want to collect. So for our first field, we're going to collect the date of the assessment. And so this is going to be a text box, which captures short text, numbers, as well as dates and times, which is perfect for us. So for our field label, this is going to be what whoever is entering the data is going to see as they're going through the form. So for our field label, we'll call this date of assessment. So in order to harmonize data collection across projects and programs at KMH, we've developed a standardized variable naming convention. And I'll show you what that looks like. So if you go into insight.kmh.ca, scroll down to the Research IT portal, click on the REDCap tab, and then Best Practices, Policies, and SOPs. And if you scroll down to REDCap Naming Conventions, this provides a little explainer. So we like to add the assessment name as a prefix. So in our case, we're creating a demographics form. So our prefix could be something like demo_. And the last bit is either the item number for a multi-item form or a unique descriptor. So going back to our assessment, let's call our variable name demo_date. We can also add some validation. So because this is a date column, we can choose a date variable item. We can choose a couple of different date options. I tend to go with date formatted as YMD. You can choose whatever you're comfortable with. You can also set a minimum and maximum. So say I know that this study is not collecting data until tomorrow, I can set maybe today's date as the minimum. And that way, if somebody enters, a date in the past, this will get flagged automatically by REDCap. Two other things to note. So REDCap has required and non-required fields. So if a field is required, as you're entering the data, it won't let you pass to the next step it won't let you save your form until you've entered that data. So most of the time we want things to be entered properly, so we'll click required. And REDCap also asks whether a field is an identifier or not. So as you went through the process of getting your REDCap form, or getting your REDCap account, you learned about protected health information such as participant's name, social insurance number, address, date of birth. So these things should generally be left out of REDCap unless you have specific approval by your REV protocol. So the daily assessment is non-identifier, so we're going to click no for this. And I sometimes like to add an additional field note. So this is just some small reminder text displayed underneath the field that'll help whoever's entering the data know what you expect. So in this example, because I want my date to be formatted as YMD, I'm going to type in YYYY-MM-DD and click Save. And you'll see this is what the field label looks like, and our field note is right here. And because we selected date as our validation option, we get a nice little calendar. So whoever's entering the data can click that and automatically change the date. Now, for our next field, we're going to collect the participant's sex. So now, instead of a text box, I don't want the user to, enter a different kind of phrase each time. I want the choices to be limited. So I'm going to choose radio buttons. We're going to make our field label participant sex. Our variable name is going to be demo_sex. And because we chose the radio button option, we have to define our choices. And REDCap always wants you to enter one choice per line. So for this case, our choices will be female, male, and other. And you'll see that whenever you have choices like this, REDCap always assigns these labels, so female, male, and other, to a raw value, 1, 2, and 3. We'll make this required, and again, it's not an identifier. Now, if as a participant is filling out this form, they select other for their sex, we might want to know some more information about this. So let's add another field. We'll use a text box. And for our field label, we'll say, if other, please specify. For our variable name, we'll call this demo_sex_other. We'll make it required, and it's not an identifier. So this is just going to add some free text for the participant to enter if they select other, but we only want to display this item if other is selected. And the way to do that is with branching logic, and that's this green arrow here. So we're going to click that. We can either type out our branching logic by hand or use the drag and drop logic builder. I'm going to use the drag and drop builder for this example. And I'm just going to drag demo_sex equals other to the other side so that the item will only show up when other is selected. And click Save. Now for our next field, we're going to collect the participant's ethnicity. And this time, instead of doing radio buttons, I'm going to show you what the drop-down list looks like. So our field label will be participant ethnicity, and our variable name will be demo_ethnicity. And for our choices, we'll say 1 is not Hispanic or Latino, 2 is Hispanic or Latino, and 3 is unknown or not reported. We'll make this required, and it's not an identifier, and click Save. And so the difference between the radio buttons and the drop-down list is that the drop-down list kind of hides all of your options into this one bar. And this is really handy if you have, 10 or more options that would essentially clog up the page if you decide to make them radio buttons. So for our next field, we'll get the participant's age. So we'll make that a text box, which includes number, and our field label will be participant's age. Our variable name will be demo_age, and we can add some validation again. So because this is age, we want it to be an integer. And we can also set a minimum and maximum value if we want. So say your study is only collecting data for participants between the ages of 18 to 30. What we can do is select the minimum as 18 and the maximum as 30. So if any data is entered outside of this range, it'll be flagged. We'll make this required, and it's not an identifier. And let's add one more field. For this one, we can collect the participant's occupation. So again, we'll make this radio buttons. For our field label, we'll make this participant's occupation. Or actually, how about employment status? And for our variable name, we'll call this demo_employment. And for our choices, we'll type in student, part-time, full-time, retired, and unemployed. And REDCap assigns a raw value to each of these. We'll make this field required, and it's not an identifier. Okay, so that's the end of our demographics form, and now we're ready to test it out. So in order to add our first record, we're going to click Add or Edit Records under the Data Collection module. And we can either choose an existing record. For this case, we don't have anything yet. So instead, we're going to click Add New Record. And you'll notice that REDCap automatically numbers your subjects numerically. So our first record is 1. For the daily assessment, I'm going to click Today. And then for our participant sex, we'll make this male, ethnicity not Hispanic or Latino, age, let's try 17, just to make sure our data validation is working, and it is. So go back to 20, full-time, and lastly, there's the form status. So if, as you're entering data, you don't have the complete data that you want to enter, you can leave the form as incomplete. There's also this unverified field option, and at CAMH we tend to make all of our forms unverified after entering data. We only change it to complete if it's been double checked by a colleague or another scorer. So I'm going to make this unverified and click Save and Exit Form. So you'll see that each of those status options, form completeness options, has a unique color associated with it. So red corresponds to incomplete, yellow is unverified, green is complete, and if no data has been entered, it's incomplete or blank with the white.